Hey, somebody's got to find my kilt. You did? Excellent. Good morning, afternoon, or evening. You are listening to the Professional Noticer.
Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane.
Here, you and I will use common sense and all the wisdom we can muster to move beyond what is true and go all the way to the truth.
Maybe we can work this out, just you and me, no?
With actual listeners in more than 100 countries, I am the Professional Noticer. Hello, everyone. I'm Andy Andrews. Hey, thank you for making me a part of your week. As the Professional Noticer, it's my job to professionally notice something for you. And nothing's off limits. What is your question? Business, spiritual issues, you got something with popular culture? Hey, we even tackle the odd conundrum. Why do people wear shamrocks on St. Patrick's Day? Because regular rocks are too heavy. Okay, look, my purpose here today and with every show we do is to play the part of a best friend or a coach. I want to help you live the life you would live if all your toughest questions were answered. Our sponsor this week is ITAM.org. That's IAITAM.org. They're the only global member-based training organization dedicated to meeting the needs of IT asset management professionals. I was up last week with Dr. Barb and the whole team there at ITAM, and this is the only global training organization turning out IT asset managers that corporations immediately hire all over the world. You need to check these people out. How would you like to compete in an accredited online program and get a degree that is actually in huge demand? And I know you might be saying, okay, but in huge demand by whom? Look, just go to IAITAM.org and look through their client list. You'll see everybody from Sony Pictures to NASA to the United Nations. Google is one of ITAM's clients. Google, Yahoo, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple. These companies only hire the people that ITAM has trained because ITAM offers the only accredited degree in the field. That's IAITAM.org. All right. Observations and answers are what we do here. I deliver the observations. You provide the questions. And always remember, the quality of your answers can only be determined by the quality of your questions. I would love to field a question from you. Come on, you guys, write me. Email's theprofessionalnoticer at andyandrews.com. And if we use your question, I'll send you your choice of a guided traveler experience, which is 8 hours of live video seminar, or you could choose the 100-year parenting program, a collection of 53 videos, each between 10 and 20 minutes. Okay, this week we are going to talk coronavirus. We've gotten a lot of questions just about, what do you think? What are you doing? How do you feel? What's your family doing? Are you traveling? I mean, we've gotten tons of questions, about the coronavirus. And so we decided, let's just talk about it. Okay, we can answer a bunch of these questions just by talking about it. First of all, let me say that I think this is really serious. I mean, if you're wondering, hey, is this just the flu or is it really? The flu is serious. Okay, the flu is serious. This is more serious. I think by a factor of 30 is what they're saying. I was listening the other day to a guy who is a detective of viruses. That's what he does for World Health, and they track down viruses and really try to get in the way and stop these things before they get started. But you have to take what the media says seriously, but you also have to take some of it with a grain of salt. For instance, the death rate for people who contract the flu is 1%. Now, I agree that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's worth getting a flu shot, because did you know that in America you have like a 1 in 85 chance of, as an adult, of dying in a car accident, and yet you have a 1 in 64 chance of dying by flu or pneumonia. So even though the flu claims a death rate of 1%, that's still significant. Okay, well, the coronavirus right now, COVID-19, is at 3%. Now, there's obviously two ways you can look at this, and I think perspective demands that we look at them both ways. So one is that this is like 30 times more deadly than the flu. Another way that we need to remember, though, we need to remember and not panic, is that, saying that it has a 3% mortality rate is just another way of saying it has a 97% survival rate. Right? I mean, I'm just doing the math here. And so we have to be careful in situations like these. And I'm not saying that it's overblown. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying we have to be careful about fear. Now, more on that in a minute. Let me just tell you some personal history here. People have been obviously very, very concerned about washing their hands and using sanitizers. Well, I got to tell you, I was a germaphobe long before it was cool. You remember the Barbara Mandrell song, I was country before country was cool, or something like that. I was country when country wasn't cool. Something I remember. But I was a germaphobe before it was cool to be one. And I'll tell you how I got there. Polly used to ask me, because I would get sick 3 or 4 times a year with sinus infections or just colds or something like that. I mean, literally 3 or 4 times a year. And Polly would say to me, she said, "Why are you sick all the time? Why are you always sick? What's wrong? You're always sick." And I would say, "Look, you fly in as many airplanes as I fly in and shake as many hands as I shake, and let's see how you do." But right then, about that time, I started really paying attention to washing my hands, and I took vitamins and stuff. But man, the hand washing thing, I mean, I just quit getting sick. Now, I knew that the airplane thing had something to do with it too, because see, I used to work on cruise ships, and as a comedian, I worked on cruise ships, and I look back and I have done over 100 cruises. So when I think I've spent 2 years of my life, more than 2 years of my life on a cruise ship, it's kind of crazy. But it wasn't all at one time, obviously. I think the longest time I ever spent on one ship, you come in on a Sunday morning, leave on a Sunday afternoon, 16 weeks. 16 weeks in a row. And I'm telling you, I could tell you stories about that. Just I got more stories from that 16 weeks than I do all the others combined, just because you do 16 weeks in a row. It's like Groundhog Day. This was before the internet. This was before there were televisions in the cruise ship rooms, or before VCRs or anything like that. And so there was a movie theater, and Superman, the original one with Christopher Reeve. Superman was in the theater every day, every week for 16 weeks. It was just nuts. It's Groundhog Day. But the thing that became very obvious, and actually when I got on the ship the very first time and was sick at the end of the week, everybody told me, they said, "Yeah, no, well, that's everybody. Everybody gets sick, right, when they get on the ship." And I came to find out that they didn't mean the first time you were ever on a ship, you were going to get sick and then that was it. I'm telling you that over about a 5 or 6 year period of time, every time I got on a ship, whether it was to do 2 weeks or 16 weeks or 5 weeks, every time I get on the ship, by the end of the first week, I was sick. And it wasn't just me, it was everybody, all the crew, every time anybody got on the ship for the first time. Now, this was years ago, remember? Okay, so this was before there were, the Purell dispensers everywhere and before people, I guess, knew what they knew. But when we got sick, the ship's doctor would just give us a course of antibiotics. And so today, antibiotics don't work as well with me. It takes them a lot longer. I have to take 2 courses because I just have built up such an immunity to them, mainly during those cruise ship years. But there is, it's no surprise to me that the coronavirus first kind of really made itself known, at least in the Western world, with these cruise ships. I love cruises, and they've taken different steps now, but it's like an airplane. I mean, you blow that, you reach up and turn that little knob to blow the air in your face. Where do you think that air is coming from? It's being recirculated from all over the airplane. And so, when I say I was a germaphobe before it was cool, I started noticing things. Here's your professional noticer for you. This won't make you feel better, but, people look, when we go into a restaurant and we look and see, is our table clean? Yeah, it's clean. They just wiped it down. With a wet rag that they used to wipe down 20 tables right before that. So I'm not sure this is really clean. And then we lay our forks and our spoons right on the table. How many times have you seen people in a public restroom and they wash their hands and then they walk right over to the door and grab hold of the handle of the door and go out? Where there's a lot of people didn't wash their hands and they just go grab the door handle. Well, now you washed yours, but you're just going to grab the door handle without, so, as my boys growing up, they would kind of laugh because I wash my hands, I'm taking a piece of paper and I'm opening that door with it. So we've got to be smart with a lot of this stuff. Now, I'm going to tell you some weird news before I tell you the good news. Okay, I'm going to tell you some good news, some perspective about this coronavirus that I believe it will make you feel better. Just researching it and writing it out has made me feel better. Now, I've had a bunch of stuff canceled. Okay, obviously because we're not gathering in large groups like we used to. I think smaller groups are obviously better, but we're not gathering those large ones. So I'm like everybody else. We're trying to figure out, how can I help? How can I do something online? We're figuring out some stuff to be able to touch people in a different way, to help people in a different way than flying across the country and appearing in front of 6,000 of them or something. We're just trying to figure some stuff out. Now, I told you I want to tell you some weird news before I tell you the good news. Here's the weird news, and I just want you to think through this because obviously we have to change some things, right? Whether you're working on your company or working on your personal life or you're a part of America or any country in the world, you've got to change some things, because if there's things happening that you don't like or things happening that are not good for us, we need to change what has made that happen. Everything we've done right now, the results we're getting right now are predictable because we have designed our lives, we've designed our businesses perfectly to produce exactly what they're producing. And so if we want to produce something different, if we want different results, we got to do something different. Well, one of the things that has happened under our noses is the way our pharmaceuticals are manufactured. Now, I guess a good way to pose this would be to ask, if I told you that the Department of Defense was going to be buying every bullet, every gun, every uniform, every piece of body armor, every tank, every ship, every airplane from China. We're going to buy it all from China. The Department of Defense is going to get all their stuff from China. You would think, what? You got to be kidding me. Okay, well, how crazy would it be to tell you that all our medicine comes from China? I mean, do you know that the last ability America had to produce antibiotics, the last factory closed in 2004? America no longer even has the ability to produce its own antibiotics. And there are 153 drugs right now, 153 that if the patient doesn't have this, these are people that are using certain pharmaceuticals, and there's 153 of them that if they don't get them, they're like dead within a week. All 153 produced exclusively overseas, mostly in China and India. It's astounding. Our own Department of Defense has to buy drugs, has to buy the pharmaceuticals from an overseas source. Now, you say, well, how in the world did that happen? In an effort to answer the yells about less expensive pharmaceuticals, the industry that makes pharmaceuticals have gone overseas. I mean, people, we're all after them to make this stuff cheaper. Why is this stuff so expensive? Well, they go where it's cheaper. But I got to tell you, it's a real problem. There's a lot of people I know that in the grocery store, they wouldn't buy tilapia. Tilapia is a great fish to eat, but they're not buying tilapia with harvested in China, because you can't even trust the dog food that's made in China. Really, you don't really know what their standards are, what might go in it, and the fish farming in China is vastly different from getting wild caught or farmed fish in America. I mean, the catfish farms in America are held to such stringent standards. You can trust that fish. They're checked all the time. I've got a friend up here in Robertsdale, Farm Fresh Meats. USDA comes in there every single day. The inspectors from USDA come in Farm Fresh Meats in Robertsdale, Alabama, every single day. Now, that may be a little overdone, but you can certainly trust what you get there. But this isn't just tilapia and shrimp and meat. This is pharmaceuticals. People need to stay alive. So somehow or another, whether it's making a deal with private industry and saying, hey, we will let you exist tax-free if you dramatically lower the cost of the pharmaceuticals. But one way or another, we better get them back. We better get that ability back. And so that's the weird news about this coronavirus, because it started in China. This is where it originated. And we don't really know what's going to happen with whether or not they close their borders or, I was in a store the other day. I was about to fly and I thought, I probably need to get some of that hand sanitizer stuff. And this was before it flew off the shelves everywhere. And, I went in, bought one, and I was getting one. And the guy said to me, he said, "You getting that?" I mean, there's a guy standing next to me. He said, "Are you getting that because of the, hearing about the coronavirus?" And I said, "Yeah, kind of. I guess I am." And I'm about to fly out. And so I'm going to carry some of these wipes with me. And he said, "Yeah, that'll be good. Look, where are they made?" And we looked, and they were made in China. So, oh God. It's just, it just becomes a challenge. Now, the coronavirus itself, I told you I was going to give you some good news. I am into perspective, as you know, right? And so one of the things that is very curious to me is I love looking back in history and finding times that are like what we're experiencing. Do we ever experience this before? And do you know there was a time, people talk about the Great Depression. Right now we're having economic impact from this coronavirus. And so if you look back during the Great Depression, it wasn't just that the stock market had crashed and all like that. Unemployment was at 25% there. Yeah, that was horrible. But the thing that's kind of taken second place in the recording of history is that people were really getting sick, and many people were dying from disease during the Great Depression. The flu was at an epidemic rate. Pneumonia was rampant, and the mortalities from tuberculosis were increasing and wouldn't actually peak until 1936. Now, in 1933, when Franklin Roosevelt was elected president, there's this speech that everybody remembers, or actually people remember one line of it. They don't really remember this speech. And most people, if you even quote that line, they don't really know when Roosevelt said it, what was going on, what he was referring to. The line, of course, is the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. It's curious to me, if you listen to that, Matt, I want to put, when we get through with this podcast, I want to let's put together a video explaining some of what I'm about to explain right now. And let's get some of Roosevelt, let's get some of those words, what he said, what he actually said, and then just briefly explain what that means, when we look at it in light of the coronavirus thing. And let's just let's do it like a 2 or 3 minute video and make that available for everybody that they can see and all this kind of in one place. But it's interesting to look because that speech was made in his inaugural address when he was first elected president, the first time. He was elected 4 times, right? And so this was the first inaugural address of the new president. This was on a cold, rainy Saturday in 1933. And if you listen to his words, which I will get that and I'll have that for you. But he says the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And then he goes on to explain a little bit about what he means. But it's interesting to me that when he delivered that speech, he was in a wheelchair. Right, he had gotten polio at the age of 39, and it wouldn't be until 1955 before Jonas Salk would create a vaccine for that disease. But FDR knew that the only thing we had to fear is fear. So what that meant was that fear can be just as much as an enemy as whatever actually caused the situation in the first place. Because fear can stall or completely stop the effort to find a solution. If people are so scared that they just run for cover and nobody's looking for a solution, or nobody's is supporting the people looking for a solution, or encouraging those people, or keeping them going, I mean, fear can literally destroy you, right? And so this coronavirus now has come into play. And so we need to remember that we have a history of solving these problems. You know, polio wasn't the only thing we created a vaccine for. You know, you think of the gajillions of people that died from yellow fever and cholera. Well, there have been vaccines created now for yellow fever and cholera and anthrax. We have vaccines for diphtheria and typhoid, whooping cough, and the Spanish flu, and we mentioned tuberculosis during the Great Depression. Well, tuberculosis, there's a vaccine for it now. Encephalitis, rabies, vaccine for it. Chicken pox. I had chicken pox. Matt, are you old enough to have had chicken? You didn't have chicken pox, did you? You didn't have anything. You're probably Matt's 13 years old. He hadn't had any disease. Did you have chicken pox? He did. Wow. Did you have measles? No. Mumps? No. I had those. But now we have vaccines for chicken pox, for mumps, for measles, for rubella. Smallpox. Smallpox, the earliest record we have of smallpox was in like 300 BC. There are mummies in Egypt that they found that caused the smallpox. I mean, they didn't cause it, but they carried that. They had that smallpox virus still in them, which is amazing considering that the last 100 years of the existence of smallpox, the estimate is that 500 people died of smallpox in the last 100 years of its existence. But there was the creation and application of a vaccine. And so in 1980, the World Health Organization certified that smallpox had been eradicated from the earth. There are vaccinations for hepatitis A, for hepatitis B, for meningitis, pneumonia, Hong Kong flu, swine flu, and the rotavirus. So now it's the coronavirus, COVID-19, number one priority of scientists and researchers all over the world. And because of all the experience that they have had through the years, all the documentation that's been done, everything that's been tried and failed was put aside. Everything that worked has been built upon. And so now it isn't like we're going into this fight to find a vaccine, to find out how to eradicate their coronavirus. It isn't like we're going into this fight blind or handcuffed. We have a history of solving problems like this. And for now, we're going to wash our hands. We're going to stay out of large crowds. We're going to be careful. But we're not going to panic because we're going to solve this one too. I'm Andy Andrews, the professional noticer, harnessing common sense and wisdom to plow through some challenges all the way to an answer for you. Hey, here's just a thought. Do you know I have a new book out? It's a re-release, but it's really a new book. It's I don't know if you've heard of the How Do You Kill 11 Million People? Why the Truth Matters More Than You Think. But we've got a brand new version out. Brand new. Added a ton of pages. It's the same book that you knew before, but through the years, I always wanted to write a book that never said Republican, never said Democrat. never said liberal, never said conservative, and yet everybody would agree with. I wanted that kind of book. And so that's what we did. And we've got some proof that that both sides agree with this. But I also have heard over the past number of years, people talking about, well, the founding fathers say this. Well, the Constitution requires that we. And, hearing all those arguments, I've also found that most of the people don't know what the Constitution says. And most of the people that I've met don't really know what the founding fathers thought other than what they've heard people say that they thought. And so I decided we're going to reprint this book, and we're going to have the Constitution printed in it where people can actually read it. And then we're going to have some letters, and we've got 15 letters from founding fathers. These aren't letters that they wrote for public display. These are letters they wrote to their friends or their family, but they pretty clearly explain what they're thinking. And so we can really get an idea of the history behind some of the decisions that were made. But it's brand new. It's bright red. How do you kill 11 million people? Why the truth matters more than you think. And I think that'll do it for this week. I'm the professional noticer. Get us out of here, Matthew. So, ladies and gentlemen, and the boys and girls who aspire to become ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of the Professional Noticer. In a world where common sense has become a superpower, I'm harnessing that tiny bit of mental energy I have for you. Seeking wisdom, making observations, and endeavoring to answer tough questions in a way that will empower your family and your business. I'm Andy Andrews. Until next week, smile while you talk. Shake hands with the kids you meet. Except for right now when we're having coronavirus, so just wave at them. Make sure you have a positive answer to the question, how's it going? And so, until next week, goodbye. This episode of The Professional Noticer was produced by Matt Limpert. The Noticer theme written and performed by Sugarcane Jane. Lucky Charms cereal provided by Twinkle and Smoke of Beverly Hills. Additional financial consideration provided by St. Patty's Reptile Warehouse. At St. Patty's Reptile Warehouse, we're committed to offering the ultimate in reptile care and breeding. Whether it's for alligators, chameleons, iguanas, salamanders, lizards, or our armored friend the tortoise, we have everything you need. Things like terrarium, food, heat lamps, fog machines, swamp mix, swamp smell, industrial humidifiers, mosquito nets, anything you need to turn that empty room into an amphibian's dream. That's St. Patty's Reptile Warehouse. On a separate note, if you happen to find snakes around the perimeter of our building, don't panic. Most of the snakes will not harm you. However, the owner, Mr. St. Patty, is not allowing any snakes to re-enter the building since they were driven out for consorting with the devil. Again. So head on down to St. Patty's Reptile Warehouse and find everything you need to keep your reptilian friend comfortable. Just please leave your snakes at the door.